Thank you for joining the Western Winter Wheat Initiative's 2016 Spring Winter Wheat webinar. Today we're going to hear from Kyle Gross, Manager of Cereal and Pulse Fungicides, as he speaks on wheat disease review.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining. As Carly mentioned, my name is Kyle Gross. I work with Bayer, and today I'm going to take you through a wheat disease review. Some tips. We're going to look at how to prepare for disease management, what you can do to protect your crop, and how you can get the most performance and drive yields in your winter wheat production. So today's program, we're going to do a dive into Western Canada's top wheat diseases. We'll look at some identification of those diseases, how the disease works from a life cycle standpoint, the impacts to the crop itself, and some tips for management of those diseases. The diseases we'll cover today include rusts, leaf spotting complex diseases, as well as fusarium head blight, which I'll refer to as FHB. Treat wheat the same. So diseases of wheat in Western Canada affect production of all types of wheat, spring, durum, as well as winter wheat. But there are many management practices that are applicable to all wheat types, such as genetics, cultural practices, and fungicide use. So as we go through the presentation, I'm going to focus on winter wheat, but there are many tactics that span across all wheat types. We'll begin with rust. Never a good thing. You can't put lipstick on this truck, and you really need to manage rust if it is a problem on your farm. So how does rust arrive in Western Canada? Rust epidemics in Western Canada, from a cereal standpoint, specifically wheat, hinge on the level of wheat crop that's infected with rust in the United States, as well as the timing of when the spores arrive in Western Canada. So South and Central USA is the major source of inoculum for the eastern prairies, for eastern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. And the Pacific Northwest is the key source of inoculum in the western prairies in southern Alberta. Stem and leaf rust typically arrive from the south central USA into our eastern prairies, whereas stripe rust typically arrives in southern Alberta by the Pacific Northwest. So a lot depends on what's going on south of the border, as well as the timing of when those spores arrive in a given growing season. Having a look at the life cycle of rust, it's very explosive. So rust is what we call a polycyclic disease. It's capable of many cycles in a given growing season, which results in rapid inoculum buildup. So there are certain pathogens in Western Canadian crops that only go through one life cycle in a year. Unlike that, rust has multiple life cycles in a year. 7 to 10 days, you can get a generation of another series of disease, which means that once rust arrives, it explodes very quickly and starts to take hold of the crop. So management of rust is very important. Having a look at the different types of rust that impact us here in Western Canada, there are a few main species. The first one is stem rust. It's primarily concerned in Manitoba and eastern Saskatchewan. As I mentioned, the inoculum comes up from the central U.S. And some of the tips for managing this is their resistance has been durable in wheat varieties due to stacking of multiple resistance genes. You can see a nice picture of stem rust on the left and how the pustules develop along the stem of the wheat plant. Leaf rust is caused by a different species of rust. Again, it's primarily concerned in the eastern prairies. Similar how it arrives from the U.S., from the central and southern U.S. And again, it can be very damaging once it takes hold. Stripe rust on the far right is primarily concerned in southern Alberta. It has shown up more frequently in the eastern part of the prairies, but it's had minor impacts. You can see the difference in the stripe rust. The pustules run along the veins of the leaf. It's pretty distinct when stripe rust arrives. Having a look at the impact of actually what rust does to the wheat crop, both leaf and stripe rust affect the leaf. So what it does is it impacts the epidermis of the leaf, which results in very quick moisture loss. And when you reduce the photosynthetic area of the leaves, the plant is just less able to produce energy and fill grain, so it will impact yield. So the key is to protect the upper leaves and the canopy when rust arrives. Stem rust, as the name implies, you weaken stems and will promote lodging. It can also disrupt the epidermis of the stem, resulting in moisture loss also, and then nutrients won't flow up to the head. This can result in premature ripening. You can see shriveled kernels. So again, the key is to protect the stem and the upper leaves. When it comes to controlling rust, one thing to look for is resistance levels in varieties. So these vary from spring to winter wheat and within the classes themselves. But have an idea of how resistant your variety is in whatever area of production you're looking at. Another is avoidance. So this means with winter wheat planting, if you can get your crop in early enough in the fall, then in the spring your crop is further advanced before the rust arrives in the United States. That's an advantage that you can use. Prevent early infections due to overwintering. So if you've got a spring crop in the area that has some disease level on it in one growing season, ensuring that that crop is complete before your winter crop is put in, and those seedlings emerge, is a good tactic to avoid overwintering on a winter wheat crop. If you're under irrigation, just avoid overwatering during key times in the growing season when the disease is likely to arrive. It just makes a conducive environment for disease propagation. And as I mentioned, with that polycyclic disease, having multiple life cycles in a year, having a moist, humid environment can perpetuate that. Finally, applying foliar fungicide if symptoms are present. There's not a lot of good industry data on the economic threshold for rust disease level when you need to treat, but it's very low, and the Alberta government suggests 5% infection is when you should spray. But for rust, it's very damaging. When it arrives, it takes hold of the crop and it spreads really quickly. So as soon as it does arrive, it's a good idea to treat with a foliar fungicide. As far as which product to use, tebuconazole-containing products globally are kind of the rust standard. It's a very strong active ingredient on that particular pathogen. Spot bat disease, so leaf spotting complex, or leaf diseases as they're often called. Cereal leaf spot diseases, I've got an image of the life cycle of Septoria for this slide, but we're going to talk about a range of leaf spotting diseases. Some of the characteristics of leaf spot diseases, unlike rust, is that they overwinter. Okay, so they are on the stubble, they're on infected stubble, and they spend the winter here in Canada, so that they develop earlier in season, and they spread by wind or rain splash during the season. Again, these are polycyclic diseases, not quite as explosive as rust, but they can have multiple generations in a year. And a similar impact to how a lesion will reduce the photosynthetic area on the leaf, which will result in less photosynthesis, less energy, less nutrients heading to the grain, and ultimately less yield. So we'll head through some pictures, some idea of the various key leaf spotting diseases, and then talk about some management tactics at the end. Septoria leaf or Septoria gloom blotch complex. So this can be caused by a number of different species. There's 3 species. And this complex of diseases may be present in the same field or even on the same plant. And different species affect different parts of the plant. Some only attack leaves, with other species attack the gloom and affect the heads. Some key features about Septoria, they flourish under high humidity and high temperatures. So between 20 and 28 degrees is when this disease is most at home. As far as the life cycle of Septoria, in about 10 to 20 days, depending on conditions, it will complete its life cycle. Lesions begin as light yellow flecks or streaks, and they start to expand into yellow or reddish brown streaks. They're kind of irregular shaped blotches restricted by the leaf veins. Ultimately, they may coalesce and kill large areas of leaf tissue, and as I mentioned, that just impacts yield. Tan spot is a very prevalent wheat disease in Western Canada. This overwinters on stubble and straw. It can be seed-borne, but that's not a significant source of inoculum. Only 6 hours of wetness or periods of dew and temperatures from between 15 to 28 produce infection. That's why you'll see tan spot so commonly in wheat fields across Western Canada, because of its ability to infect with just some dew at 15 degrees, as well as spending the winter infecting stubble and straw. It's very difficult to have no tan spot in a given year. Polycyclic as well, again, multiple generations per year. With this disease, spore production can occur in 7 to 14 days. Some key distinguishing features of this as compared to other leaf diseases. Lesions are oval and diamond shaped. They begin as yellow as well with a dark center. But as the lesions mature, the spots enlarge and there's a dark oval within a yellow halo. And lesions with this disease do not develop pycnidia. So there'll be no black spots within the lesions. Kernel infection can occur later in season and produce shriveled seeds as well. Spot blotch. This infects wheat also, and this is caused by the same pathogen that causes common root rot. So C. sativus will end up resulting in spot blotch. Also overwinters on crop residue in the soil or on the seed. And pathogen can survive in the soil with this disease for several years. In season, again, spores are spread by wind and rain splash in the lower part of the canopy. It likes warm, moist conditions, as most diseases do. This is about 25 to 30 degrees is optimum for spot blotch. And the lesions begin first as brown spots on the leaf sheath and blades, and then they enlarge to form dark brown blotches with very distinct margins. So they may be surrounded, these spots may be surrounded by a zone of chlorotic yellow tissue, and dark spots may also appear on the heads, which can result in seed discoloration. So when it comes to protecting your wheat crop from leaf diseases, what time can you spray to protect the flag leaves below? So you see in the far left image, there's a flag leaf stage, and the head hasn't come out of the boot yet. All the way over to the right side of the image, where the head is out and the flag leaf is now more horizontal, which is about a 10 to 14 day window, your opportunity to protect the flag leaf. The answer is all of them. You can spray at any of these times to protect your crop from leaf diseases. It just depends on the level of disease that you've got within your crop, which will ultimately determine what the right time to protect the flag leaf is. Tips for control for leaf spot diseases. So again, these diseases often overwinter. They start in the stubble and the seedlings and they work their way up. They're literally a bottom-up approach. They start in the bottom part of the canopy and depending on conditions will work up the canopy toward the flag leaf. So wide rotations in residue management can reduce pressure. With diseases that do live on stubble and can live in the soil, breaking up that cereal rotation with oil seeds or pulse crops where those diseases do not have a host is a good management strategy. Again, knowing the resistance level of your variety, there are many different varying levels of resistance rather with different varieties. So keep an eye on that. With leaf spot diseases, scouting is really important. Unlike rust, which just arrives on a weekend and all of a sudden it's there, leaf spot diseases propagate over time. So they'll start in the lower part of the canopy, as I mentioned, they'll work their way up. So scouting fields regularly will really give you a handle on what pathogens are in the field and how quickly they're developing. And that'll give you a good idea of how to manage that, how quickly the disease is moving up through the canopy, depending on your conditions. From your agronomy school, you recall we've got the host or the pathogen and we've got the environment. When all those things are in play, the disease will start to move up the canopy. What we've learned through our years of trials is if you have a really good looking wheat crop, protecting your crop with a fungicide will pay. Because leaf spot diseases are often there, present, sometimes in low levels, sometimes in high levels, you will see a return from spraying. So it's just up to the agronomist to manage what the right time is depending on how that disease is moving through the canopy. Glaudian headache. Head blight can be quite a headache. It's a nasty disease, and it's becoming more common in Western Canada. It's tending to move west over time from Manitoba to eastern Saskatchewan, and now it's becoming more common in Alberta than it ever was. And it's a very important disease to manage, and it can be quite devastating. Similar to the other diseases, just looking at the life cycle of FHP, you can see there's soil-borne infection and infected seedlings. When the infected seedlings have Fusarium on them, Fusarium graminearum is the most virulent of species of Fusarium, that will be on the crop as the crop is developing. An infected crop in the early season, causes seedling rots and blight. So this early season infection doesn't necessarily cause FHP later in the season, but it can be a source of inoculum for future infections. Spores within the younger crop spread by rain splash and wind. And later in the season, it can infect the flowering parts or any portion of the head. So primary infections of FHP occur when the florets are open during flowering, and post-flowering damage like hail can cause further infection. So for this disease, rain is required about 5 to 7 days prior to heading to initiate spore release. So you can have Fusarium graminearum in the crop and then not have FHP really manifest itself too much in the heads on a given year because it's quite impacted by the environment at flowering time. So infection is favored by prolonged periods of wetness, humidity, rainfall, dew, high relative humidity, and if the temperatures are around 18 to 29 degrees when the crop is flowering, this can really increase the likelihood that FHP will develop in the head. So fungicide timing for this is very, very critical. Some symptoms that you'll see is premature bleaching of one or many spikelets in the head. Sometimes you can see a ring of pink or a salmon color at the base of the florets. And then shriveled, lightweight, chalky seed. The affected spikelets will have what they call Fusarium damaged kernels, or FDK, as a result. And why is this a problem? Well, the impact is quite serious. Reduced yield is obviously one. Having the FDK, or the Fusarium damaged kernels, reduces your yield. But also importantly, and more importantly, is the reduction in quality. So mycotoxin production from FHP, which is known as DON, happens when the crop is infected with FHP, and DON is a toxin that has a lot of negative impacts on downstream as far as what the crop can be used for, but also to the producer. Being downgraded for DON can really impact the bottom line. So this impacts things like baking performance. The bread does not rise normally. It can impact pasta elasticity and the color. Malting. Many malting companies have a zero tolerance for DON and test for it before purchasing, as well as feed quality can really impact animals, most specifically hog producers, that have a zero tolerance for DON. So all of this means that if your end-use customer isn't interested in your grain, your profitability can be severely impacted. So management of the disease is very important. Speaking of manage, what can you do as a wheat producer, winter wheat producer for FHP management? If it's not established in your area, make sure that you're using seed that has no detectable Fusarium graminearum, which is the most aggressive of the species. Make sure you're treating your seed to reduce the risk of transmission, reduce the risk of buildup of inoculum through seedling disease, because as mentioned, it's those seedlings that create inoculum earlier in the year that 1 year, if the conditions are right, can impact your crop at heading. And learn the disease symptoms so that you can be scouting for it during the season to understand if you are going to be impacted by FHP in future. If it's established in your particular area, your management is a bit more stringent, I guess. You need to continue, obviously, to plant seed that's of high quality. Rotating away from cereal crops to non-host crops, again, is a good tactic, a good cultural practice that will lower the inoculum in the soil and promote residue breakdown. So, having nice chopping and distribution, reduce burial, so to enhance or to hasten the disease breakdown is important. FHP management with least susceptible varieties is more difficult in winter wheat. In spring wheat, the resistance is breeding is ahead of where it is in winter wheat today. So try to use a variety that is least susceptible, but with winter wheat, that's more of a challenge. And so something like planting your crop at the right time in the fall so that it goes through the flowering stage earlier in the year, the following season, before the risk is high, is a good strategy. Again, foliar fungicide is an option if the conditions are right and you think that you've got a chance to have FHP in your crop. Applying a foliar fungicide at the correct time is very important. And also, again, if you're in an irrigated area, limiting that irrigation during the flowering period, which is the most critical time for releasing spores and then infecting the crop. When it comes to management of diseases with the foliar fungicide, at Bayer we've been doing a large-scale grower-run strip trial program for a number of years now, and this is all wheat types combined, spring and winter. And we've separated the data out, and the results are very similar across all wheat types, spring, durum, and winter, that applying a fungicide at the flag leaf or at head timing when the conditions are nice, and the conditions are right for a good crop, result in quite a substantial yield increase. So really consider the management from an agronomic standpoint, reducing inoculum in your field from year to year, but also directly impacting the bottom line. Applying a foliar fungicide can really be a great strategy, not only agronomically, but also economically. So the summary for wheat disease is that they can be managed effectively, but it's a good idea to combine your tactics. Look at your resistance levels in the varieties that you're considering, cultural practices such as rotation, straw management, as well as using effective chemistry, which helps manage disease in a given year and can also reduce inoculum in subsequent years. Scouting fields regularly in season is very important, as I mentioned, to understand what's going on in the field. It helps you make sound decisions in a given year. And again, if you have a nice crop developing, it looks like you've got potential for a lot of bushels, and the conditions are adequate for disease development, protecting your crop in a preventative manner can be a great strategy, and it can pay to spray. So thank you for your time. Appreciate you tuning in today, and best of luck this year.
Thank you, Kyle. This is valuable info for all Western Canadian agronomists and growers as they scout their fields and determine their management plans this year, so thank you so much for that. The Western Winter Wheat Initiative is a partnership between Bayer, Ducks Unlimited Canada, the Mosaic Company, and Richardson International. I want to especially thank Bayer for their ongoing support of the Western Winter Wheat Initiative and the winter wheat industry here on the prairies. Bayer has been an important partner of ours since 2009, and we would not be where we are today without them. As always, follow us on Twitter with our handle @GrowWinterWheat, or visit our website, growwinterwheat.ca, for more information about growing winter wheat in Western Canada. It is a valuable tool for all growers and agronomists on the prairies. Thank you for joining us today.